Are you always coming up with ideas? Do you marvel at successful business owners? Do you hate being told what to do? Ever take things apart just to see how they work? Are you a dreamer? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Enclave with Kevin Wortham, the podcast that focuses on building, maintaining, pivoting, planning, and investing in you, the entrepreneur. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Pro Tapes and Specialties is the world leader in tape manufacturing and specialty conversion with over 40 years of experience. In addition to our pro brand of high-quality specialty adhesive tapes, we provide contract converting services that help improve your profitability, streamline your supply chain, and reduce inventory cost. We offer the most complete range of converting capabilities in the industry, such as cloth tape, double-coated tape, specialty tape, paper tape, masking tape,
vinyl tape, carton sealing tape, adhesive transfer tape, duct tape, foam tape, electrical tape, filament tape, foil tape, reflective tape.
And the tape just keeps on rolling. Visit us online today at www.protapes.com or call us at 800-345-0234. Pro Tapes, it's just how we roll.
Welcome to another fantastic episode of the Entrepreneur Enclave, Life's Coming Attraction. I am your host, Kevin Wortham. Listen, we are just coming back into the new year. This young lady, our next guest, is going to tell you everything that you need to know about mindfulness and just letting go and holding on and just how to be strong. Kimme Carlos, welcome to the platform. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Kevin. I am so well blessed and highly favored and delighted to be on the platform with you tonight.
Yes, thank you. So I think that I'm on Facebook today, and I saw that you have this new position. You're the interim executive director, and please tell us the name of the organization.
Yes, the name of the organization is Princeton AlumniCorps, and we are a fellowship nonprofit that was actually founded by Princeton University class of 1955. So the organization is just a little more than 30 years, maybe about 33 years old now.
Yes.
And I've actually been with the organization in my 7th year. So I was promoted into the role of interim executive director. My previous role was director of operations and culture.
Yes. And so what's the mission of the organization, of the agency?
So we provide one-year fellowship programs for Princeton University graduates who are interested in doing work in nonprofit, public, and governmental positions. And we offer in this one-year fellowship a paid position with more than 400 organizations that we have partnerships with. And we provide personal and professional development for them through that year. So I call it Adulting 101, right, is what we teach the students. Everything from managing your mental and emotional wellness to how to balance a checkbook, to how to manage up, to understanding equity and diversity. And then we also offer a 9-month cohort program for young, up-and-coming nonprofit professionals. They do not need to be Princeton graduates, who are looking to continue to grow and develop in their nonprofit career. They meet once a month with a facilitator who works with them also on personal and professional development and how that looks in the nonprofit sector. And I'm so passionate about Princeton AlumniCorps because it's an organization that really walks the talk when it comes to doing everything through a lens of equity and justice.
Yes.
And I actually joined the organization back in 2016 as the office administrator. And I came in to really do work around office management and assist them with administrative and operation tasks. And the position just continued to grow as the organization grew. And I never imagined that I would, eventually be stepping into the role of executive director, but very excited about that. And it speaks to how serious the organization is about creating opportunities for professional growth and career advancement. And so I'm really, really excited to be stepping into this role.
Fantastic. Now, I got to ask a personal question. Are some of those persons able to come and work in the Trenton area?
Absolutely, yes. We have been collaborating off and on with organizations in Trenton. The way it works is a partner organization is an organization that can afford to provide a 1-year paid position.
Yes.
And we provide the personal and professional development,
yes,
and the organization actually pays the position. And that includes, health benefits and so forth. Most of our students are looking to travel outside of Jersey because they want to be able to travel, across the country.
Yes.
But we do have positions in and around New Jersey and the Philly area.
Yes.
And we have partnered with organizations in Trenton several times. So that's always an opportunity. And if there's an organization that has an interest in hiring a fellow,
yes,
we would love to have them reach out to us, and so that we can start, looking at how we can build that partnership.
Kimme, that sounds fantastic. That is great work that you're doing. And you're going to hear this first. I would love to interview several of your fellows on the podcast, because I think that the work that you're doing and probably the impact that they're going to have is going to be incredible. So I would love to do that as well.
I think that's wonderful. We will absolutely make that happen.
Yeah. Now let's start from the beginning. Who is Kimme? How did you become so great, and how did you become so recognized?
What a great question. Talk about boosting somebody up.
No, listen, I am just singing the good news as to who you are based on other people that know you. And I've had a chance to get to know you as well. You are doing phenomenal work. So I just want to say, how did you become so great? Where did it begin?
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Well, most people in Trenton know me through the Urban Mental Health Alliance, which was a small all-volunteer nonprofit that I founded in 2013. And we were operational for just about 8 years. Unfortunately, we ceased operations in 2020, just around the time that the pandemic landed. And that nonprofit was really all about bringing mental health and wellness empowerment, education, advocacy, and knowledge into the Trenton community, understanding what does mental illness look like? How do we manage our mental health and wellness? How do we prevent crisis? What do we do when we go in crisis? Substance use recovery. And we spent a lot of time teaching through panels, web roundtables. We did a conference. And I was really, really excited about the way we were able to really bring information and advocacy around mental health into Trenton. And often people came to know me, as a safe person, right? Because in Black and brown communities, especially Black African American communities, we don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about crisis. We don't talk about suicide, and we don't talk about substance use disorder, or what we formally know as addiction, right? Yes. And in the meantime, our mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and sons and daughters are dying from suicide, dying from substance use, overdose, dying from mental illnesses. And so it was just really, really important to me that we begin to have this conversation.
How do we begin to have this conversation? What is the one word that we can say when we're trying to engage another person that it's okay to let go of that pain?
You know what? That's an excellent question. And I want to answer that by just giving a little bit of backstory on myself and how I came to really understand how to do exactly what you just said.
Yes.
The reason that I'm so passionate about mental health and wellness, and especially substance use recovery, is because I'm a person in recovery. This past November, I celebrated 20 years clean and sober.
Amen.
And it took a long time to get there, to do that work, right?
Yes.
And we're learning more and more that mental illnesses and substance use disorders are born out of trauma.
Yes.
And there is no population in the country more traumatized and grief-stricken than Black African Americans.
Yes.
And when I first started doing the work around mental health, I was really oblivious to that. I understood mental illness, because when I came out of rehab and I went through what was Princeton House back then,
Yes.
came out of rehab, I was diagnosed with depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety disorder. And I didn't understand what any of those things meant, right? Yes. And I was told that, listen, you're going to have to get your arms around these illnesses if you want to stay sober. Don't go anywhere where people are drinking or doing any drugs. Don't hang out with anybody doing drinking or drugging, and make sure that you stay clean. But nobody talked to me about exactly what mental illness is.
Yes.
And how I was going to get my arms around that. I just knew that if I was going to stay sober and clean,
Yes.
I was going to have to learn how to manage these illnesses. But nobody was talking about it, Kevin. At the time, my dad, my stepmom didn't want to talk about it. The pastor of the church that I was attending at the time didn't want to talk about it. My siblings, friends, colleagues. There was nowhere for me to turn to have this conversation. But everything in me knew
Yes.
that it was time for me to get clean.
Yes.
And so I turned to a lot of organizations, the biggest one being NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And it was there that I found my tribe. I found people who understood what mental illnesses were and understood recovery.
Yes.
And that's when I started becoming an advocate around mental health. But I found that the work that NAMI and a lot of other organizations were doing were not coming into Trenton. Case in point, as you just said earlier, right? Can we make sure we have fellows in Trenton? They were not coming into Trenton to do the work.
Yes.
And that concerned me. And for whatever reason, God put the city of Trenton on my heart, because I'm a Trenton transplant. I was actually raised in California.
What?
But I raised my children. Yep, and we'll get to my personal guide in a little bit. But
Yeah.
I raised my children, right up the road in Hamilton.
Yes.
So I knew about Trenton, but I didn't know the city very well until I started doing advocacy work around mental health.
Yes.
An organization said, hey, there's a pastor in Trenton who's having a crisis with one of his church members who appears to be experiencing some psychosis. Why don't you go talk to them?
Yes.
I was very aware that, I was the token Black that was going to go in and have the conversation. And I was comfortable paying that tax because I wanted somebody to hear what I had to say.
Yes.
And so that was my introduction into the city of Trenton. I actually went to the church, had a conversation, fell in love with the church, fell in love with the community. And I've been, a member of Trenton ever since.
Awesome.
Lived in Trenton, worked in Trenton, go to church in Trenton. And that was really the beginning of my advocacy work, right?
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
why I decided to found the organization there. So everything that you just said around how do we have this conversation, that was the struggle, right? Because nobody wanted to have the conversation.
Yes.
And in doing the work with the Urban Mental Health Alliance, I realized that there were several factors when it comes to Black African American health, especially mental health. And we can't have a conversation about being healthy or being in recovery if we don't address
Yes.
a lot of the systemically unjust social systems that we have that oppress Black African Americans, and why that trauma and that grief grows out of that, right?
Yeah.
And that is where my advocacy work really began to intersect between mental health and social justice.
And
One of the
hey, I'm sorry. And what's so interesting is that for Black folk, particularly Black men, it's like a badge in a wrong way. It's like a badge of honor to wake up in the morning and to go through all these trials and tribulations without saying a word at the end of the day. And so what we need to have brothers on the side to say it's okay to go through your trials and tribulations, but we need to have you check in to make sure that you're checking out okay. And that's one thing that we don't do. So again, I thank you for the work that you do, but we've got to make it easy and we've got to make it okay for brothers and sisters to say, I need to check in to see what's going on. That's the part that I want to get to. How do we do that? How do we make people feel comfortable about talking openly about their mental health concerns and crisis?
And that's the key, right?
Yeah.
How do we normalize
Yes.
having this conversation?
Yes.
See, there was a time, Kevin, when we didn't talk about cancer.
Yes.
We didn't talk about breast cancer. We didn't talk about prostate cancer. There was a time when we didn't talk about HIV and AIDS.
Yes.
There was a time when we didn't understand diabetes,
Yes.
right? Now we talk about this pretty openly in a regular basis.
Yes.
That's the level that we need to get to when it comes to talking about our mental health.
Yes.
But the reason it's tricky, again, is because our mental health is so deeply entwined with historical, social, and cultural norms.
Yes.
There's a reason Black folks don't talk about this. Incidentally, most populations and communities shy away from mental health because we still don't understand a lot of it, right?
Yes.
We still don't understand fully how our brains work. And when we go into crisis, people do strange things, which is scary. That's understandable. But when it specifically comes to people of color, and more specifically Black African-American men and women, there's historical reasons why we do not want to be vulnerable enough to have this conversation, right? If you're Black, if you're formerly incarcerated, if you're impoverished, if you have any type of record, if you have gang affiliation,
yes.
if you've had run-ins with law enforcement, if you're illiterate, if you're a Black immigrant, and especially if you're a Black woman, right?
Yes.
These are all areas where we are already vulnerable.
Yes.
These are all areas where we've had to learn how to be resilient and how to keep ourselves safe.
Yes.
We're not going to add in the vulnerability of being in a mental health crisis on top of that,
yes.
for fear that we know that the way our systems are built in this country, it is not to protect us.
Yes.
So we've created workarounds. We've created behaviors, self-preservation, self-protection behaviors, like what goes on in my house stays in my house, like you don't share our business, like don't cry, be strong, deal with it, right?
Yes.
We've created all this for self-preservation. But the beautiful thing is that we're living in a time now where there's a wealth of information around learning how we can be healthy and resilient mentally and emotionally, and recognizing that that is very different from being strong. We are a strong people, but we are not pack mules.
Yes.
Being resilient gives us an opportunity to say, I'm vulnerable,
yes.
and I need help.
Yes.
I need support. But in order to do that, Kevin, we have to, A, understand what mental health crisis looks like, B, understand how to maintain our mental health, and C, and this is the most important thing, and this is where I have run up against it with Black folks time and time again. The most important thing is that we have to create safe spaces for each other to be vulnerable.
Say
That we have to create safe spaces to be vulnerable with each other. I cannot tell you how many times as a Black woman, I have gone to other Black women or Black men that I love, that I trusted in a broken state, for them to tell me, get strong, you're not weak, get over this, stop crying, I don't want to hear this, it could be worse. As opposed to creating a safe space for me to be vulnerable and say, I can't be strong right now, I'm not resilient right now, I'm in pain, I'm broken. I need you to hold a safe space for me and allow me to be broken right now. We don't do that for each other. And so we have men and women that are literally dying by suicide, and that's whether they're jumping in front of trains, jumping off of bridges, jumping in front of gunfire, or overdosing on drugs. Doing that because it's easier to escape that way than it is to be in a place where your pain is not going to be acknowledged.
Yes.
And that is where the struggle comes in. We have to be comfortable having the conversation around the pain and trauma and grief in our communities and in our families. And we have to give each other space to be able to say, I'm vulnerable. We don't allow ourselves to do that. So we can normalize the conversation by doing it and by allowing those that we love who look like us to do it as well. So when your brother comes to you struggling, give him space to let him struggle. Give him space to cry. Give him space to say, I don't understand. I'm scared. I'm angry. I'm worried. I'm confused. When the women come to you in your life, treat them with gentleness. Treat them with kindness. Hear the pain that they're in and validate and affirm that pain. And then in addition to that, we all need to understand what crisis looks like so that when we're going through crisis or our loved one is going through crisis, we know how to engage in that. And that's the work that the Urban Mental Health Alliance did for 9 years.
Yes.
And that's the work that I continue to do as a wellness and equity advocate and consultant, which is what I do through my smaller consulting firm, right?
Yes.
Teaching what mental health is, but also teaching people how to advocate for themselves and their loved ones in a safe space.
Yes.
So that before we get to crisis, before the cops get called, before we end up in Trenton Psych, before our loved ones find themselves standing on a platform at the train,
Yes.
there's an opportunity for us to see those signs and symptoms of being unwell and either advocating for ourselves or those who love us can advocate for us on our behalf.
Yes. Now, I want you to help me unpack this statement that I'm going to share with you, right? So you said creating that safe space. What does the safe space look like, and where could that safe space be? And then how many people can you accommodate in the safe space? So what I'm saying to you, let's say you've got a group of 4 or 5 men or 4 or 5 women. Could that create the safe space? And
what a great question. No one has ever asked me, how do you create the safe space? I'm so delighted to hear you ask me that question. So let me explain to you what a safe space means, first of all, and then we'll talk about all the different ways that you can create it.
Yeah.
A safe space is a space that is physically as well as mentally, emotionally, a place where a person feels safe to be vulnerable. Now, when I say safe, that means there is no fear of being judged, humiliated, ignored, gaslighted, right? It's a space where you know you can be completely vulnerable. So when I think about that, I think about the relationship I had with my grandmother,
Yes.
my maternal grandmother.
Yes.
That is the one person in the world that I knew loved me unconditionally. I
Yes.
can't even remember any time that she ever judged me or made me feel less than or humiliated. The space with her, whether it was in her kitchen or on the phone with her, she always held space where I could be vulnerable and I could come to her and know
Yes.
that there was going to be no pain in that space. Okay.
Yes.
So that's what a safe space means, first of all.
Okay.
The way you create that safe space is you make sure that you have boundaries and guardrails around that space.
Yes.
So for men, especially our black men need spaces where it's just theirs,
Yes.
where it's only black men, nobody else,
Yes.
no other men of any other color or race, and no other people of any other gender.
Yes.
It needs to be black men who were assigned male at birth because their experience is very unique, right?
Yes.
In this space, to be vulnerable in this space without worrying about people are going to think I'm weak. People are going to think I'm crazy. People are going to think I'm not really a man. They're going to judge me. They're going to run and tell my business, right? In you create this safe space, and typically in a safe space, when it's in a group like that, you're going to have some guidelines. So you're going to say everyone in this room is committed to what is said in this room is confidential. Everyone in this room is committed to respecting everybody in this room, and everybody in this room is committed to making sure that we're going to protect each other's hearts. What that means is anything that I say or do, I'm going to be conscious that it does not affect your heart.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's my priority while I'm in this space with you.
Yes.
Anything that I say or do, protecting your heart meaning your soul, your emotions, your psychological well-being, that's at the forefront of my mind.
Yes.
To make sure that I'm not bringing any harm into this space. That's a safe space.
Yes.
So most people across Trenton and actually across the state of New Jersey now, and especially, in the Episcopal Diocese, which is my church affiliation, people know me as what you call a safe person.
Yes.
What that means is if you are in my influence anywhere, if you're on my social media, if you're in my presence, in person, if you're on the phone with me, if you're engaging with me, I'm a safe person.
Yes.
I will never judge you.
Yes.
I will never break confidence as long as, there's no risk of physical harm to yourself or someone else. I will never break confidence, right? There will never be any gaslighting. You will never be humiliated, right? There's no patronizing. There's no condescending. And whatever it is you need or however you need to be vulnerable, I'm going to be there. I'm going to listen. I'm going to hold space for you. And I'm going to try and give you any type of knowledge, resources, or information that I have that I think will support you. Okay.
Yes.
I do that in every realm. So if I am talking to you as a friend, as a partner, as a colleague, as a family member, or if I'm facilitating, I'm public speaking, I'm teaching, I'm preaching, whatever it is, the space around me is safe. And I especially do that on my social media pages as well.
Yes.
Which means everybody who has ever spent any time engaging with me on social media knows that you do not have the opportunity to come on my page and judge people of color in any way.
Yes.
Judge Black women in any way.
Yes.
Be racist or bigoted in any way. Be oppressive in any way. I have very strict boundaries around that.
Yes.
I have deleted people. I have blocked people to make sure that my space on social media is a safe place.
Yes.
Okay. So all of this is really important in terms of encouraging and empowering each other, because we can't do this alone, right? We know that we have to do this together as a village, as a community.
Yes.
And so in order for us to really normalize, getting back to your original question, normalize being able to talk to each other, we have to provide space to allow each other to do that.
Yes.
The same way we did with breast cancer, prostate cancer, HIV, right? There was a time when no one would ever talk about HIV, right? Mm-hmm. But now we've created spaces where we can actually talk about that in safe ways. We have to do the same thing with our mental health. That's really, really important. Now my father, and my stepmom are my biggest fans, and appreciate and understand the work that I do, right? People who know me know my story. They know that we lost my mother to suicide. She was very young. She was younger than my daughter is now. The older I get, the more I realize how very young my mother was when she passed. She was only 32 when we lost her to suicide.
Oh, wow.
And of course, that was traumatizing to my entire family, right? So to my father, to all of my mother's siblings were still alive. My mother's parents were still alive. And then, of course, my brother and I. So I was 12. My brother was 8. So we were all young and grief-stricken and traumatized. And by the time I was 14, I was drinking and doing drugs full time.
Yes.
And I went on, to be an active addiction for more than 20 years. And I was what people call, like to use the phrase, a functioning alcoholic, right? And because I graduated college, I got married, I, had 2 children, got divorced, bought a house, had a career, but I was deep, deep, deep in addiction and deep in grief and trauma and didn't even know it because we didn't talk about this. My mother died. We didn't talk about suicide in the 70s and 80s and in the 90s, right? And so it was like, one minute I had this beautiful mother who meant everything to me, as most mothers do mean to their young daughters. Yes. And the next day she was gone and nobody wanted to mention her name, right? Wow. And it was traumatizing to me. And there was a level of grief to this day that will never heal. Yes. And so I did what most people do in trauma. I self-medicated because that was the only way that I could deal with the pain, right?
Yes. Yes.
But nobody talked about this. Nobody provided space for me until I started doing the work as a volunteer. I started going to organizations and volunteering and learning. And it began to dawn on me, well, none of these folks look like me. How come my folks aren't talking about this?
But Kimme, hold up right there. But what was your motivation to start volunteering? Because you thought that would help, or what
I started volunteering because, as I said, nobody wanted to talk about it, and I needed to learn.
Got you. Okay.
If I was going to stay, because by the time I got sober, I had been divorced.
Yes.
I had relocated to Mercer County.
Yes.
I had bought a house, and I had 2 children.
Yes.
And I knew that if I was going to stay sober,
Yes.
I was going to have to really understand what this trauma, what this depression, what this anxiety was that they were talking to me about, because I didn't know.
Yes.
You know? And so I had to start actually volunteering to begin to learn about these things.
Yes.
And and the organizations I was volunteering with were so dang happy to have me. They're like, "Ooh, we got a black woman," you know. Not only did they get a black woman, but they had a black woman that wouldn't stop talking, wouldn't stop asking questions, volunteered for everything, you know. But I learned so much, Kevin, and I built so many relationships and built networks and collaborations.
Yes.
And I began to feel empowered, because when we have knowledge and information, that's when we feel empowered. But I got tired of every time somebody wanted something to do with black folks, they sent me.
Gotcha.
And I said, you know what? I need to go and create an organization where my people are,
Yes.
right, in Trenton,
Yes.
so that I can meet my people where we are,
Yes.
as opposed to you send me into Trenton every time somebody black says they need help, right? And so that's how that came about.
Gotcha.
And then, as I said, as I did the work, I began to really understand the intersection between mental health and mental health and social justice. And
Yes.
so, you know, I went on to get several certifications. So I'm certified as a dismantling racism trainer, certified as a suicide prevention trainer, and a whole host of other, you know, credentials that I have around doing this work. But you can't have a conversation about mental health without understanding how very unique the mental health of black folks is in this country,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And all the factors that go into that. It is not a cookie cutter approach. And it
Yes.
starts with us empowering and educating ourselves, and then providing space for those that we know and love who look like us to be vulnerable enough to learn and heal and get well.
Yes. Yes. Now, you know what I was just thinking, a few things just came to my mind, and one is funny, and I want you just to bear with me. You know, I smoke cigars, and when we talked about that safe space, right, I only allow my best of friends to come on the porch, all black men, and it's a safe space, and we do exactly what you talk about.
Right.
Whatever we talk about on the porch stays on the porch.
That's right.
And I've had many people who are of color, you know, African American color. They have said to me, Kevin, can I come on your porch and talk to you? And sometimes I've said to those folks, no, you can't, because I just don't feel that you're ready for the porch. You know, not. You know.
That's right.
But
absolutely, and you have a right to do that.
Yeah, but we've created that space. But here's my funny thing that I would love to see you do. I would love to see you do an all call where you would have women create like support cohorts, and you would do the facilitation. Like it could be like 3 or 4 women to a group that becomes a cohort, and then their friends that may be affected by some of this trauma, they've been trained by you to learn how to create the safe space within those 4 persons.
So, you know, it's so fascinating that you would say that, because I actually created a cohort group called the Black Woman's Toolbox.
Okay.
And I actually did that back in 2020 when the pandemic hit, for that very reason, because
I love
it. I was already doing it informally before the pandemic,
yes.
right? Doing exactly that, creating safe spaces, but also providing or aligning my empowerment with the empowerment of other Black women, yes. by providing tools and resources around what wellness looks like,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And did that for a couple of years. The only reason I ceased doing that is because I'm actually pursuing ordination in the Episcopal Church to the priesthood right now, and my schedule is so tight, you know, working full time and in school full time. And so there's a pin in that.
Yes.
But yes, that's exactly, you know, the spaces that I have been creating and want to continue to create.
Now, wait. Let's slow down, because I'm hearing something. I want to make sure I'm hearing it correctly. You are going back to school for ordination into the priesthood.
Yes, I am an ordination aspirant.
Yes.
to the priesthood in the Episcopal Church.
Yes. Now,
And I am a year and a half into a 3-year program.
wow, congratulations. Wonderful.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So a lot of my work that I do will always has been, but will now be much more disciplined, intentional, and focused around the spiritual aspect of our
Yes.
mental health wellness as well.
Yes.
And so that's one of the things that I'm really excited about doing once I get on the other end of ordination. I'm actually, ordained into the priesthood, is really doing that spiritual work around mental health and wellness. And my passion is doing it with Black women. And so
Yes.
doing spiritual direction, understanding the difference between, as you said at the very beginning, understanding the difference between mindfulness and meditation, and how all of that is actually prayer,
Yes.
regardless of what Western Christianity wants to call it or try and delineate it. All of that is prayer, right?
Now, Kimme, let me ask this personal question, because in the Black community we often say, when God was speaking to you, when He was drawing you into you becoming closer to Him, what did that voice sound like? What did that look like for you to know that you had to take this next step?
Wow, you guys got all the great questions. Because these are all things I love to talk about.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm so grateful to have this platform.
Absolutely.
So, God, this is what I tell people all the time. We serve a phenomenal God because God understands diversity, because God created us,
Yes.
right? So when we think diversity, we think in terms of gender, race, ethnicity, nationality. But there's also diversity in the way we engage with the Creator and the way we engage with the world,
Yes.
right? Just look at the world around us. Look at the animal kingdom. Look at our environment. Look at nature.
Yes.
And look at all the incredible diversity
Yes.
that God created.
Yes.
So there's going to be diversity in the way we engage with God as well, right?
Yes.
Which is why we have Baptists and Episcopals and Pentecostal, and all of these faiths have different ways that we engage with God, okay?
Yes.
For me, what I have found is that when I hear from God, it's a thought in my mind, and that thought, for me, is absolute truth.
Okay.
Now, when I say absolute truth, let me explain that. I know that I know that I know that I know that I know
Yes.
that my name is Kimme Carlos,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I know that I know that I know that big burning thing in the sky is the sun.
Yes.
I know that I know that I know that if I don't open my mouth and take a breath, I will die, right? These are things that I know.
Yes.
I know that I'm squarely rooted in Black African-American culture, that I am a Black person. I know this.
Yes.
I am absolutely sure that my physical, mental, emotional, psychological makeup aligns with being a female.
Yes.
Okay, these are all things that are absolutes for me.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that aren't so absolute. When I wake up tomorrow, will I still have a job?
Yes.
Am I still going to get a paycheck? When I put my key in the car, even though I take a good job of taking care of this Buick, but when I put the key in the car, is it absolutely going to work?
Yeah.
Do I absolutely know the sun's going to come out tomorrow, or is it going to be rainy? Those things I don't know for sure.
Yes.
Right? A lot of times I need to make decisions, and I'm like, well, I'm not sure. I need to think about it. Let me look at the options. Let me do some research. But when God speaks, when this thought comes into my heart,
Yes.
it is so sure and so absolute that there's no ambivalence.
Yes.
There's no confusion.
Yes.
It is very clear to me.
Yes.
Now, that doesn't mean that I'm always happy about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's been times where I was praying on some stuff and the answer came and it was very clear to me.
Yes.
And I wasn't happy about it, but I knew that it was from God.
Yes.
Okay. And so when it comes to God putting something on your heart that He wants you to do, that we often call like a calling, right? what happens to me, and I'm learning more and more, as I'm going through the ordination process, happens to a lot of other people, is it will sit right there on your heart, Kevin, like a rock until you surrender and become obedient.
Yes.
So when I founded the Urban Mental Health Alliance, I know that calling came from God, because it sat on my heart for 2 years.
Yes.
And I just was like, Lord, listen, I'm just trying to stay sober. You got to be kidding. I mean, I'm doing everything. I'm going to church. I'm volunteering. I'm serving the community. You want me to start an organization? Like, I don't know, and I'm wrestling with God. But I knew that this was from God.
Yes.
I knew, right?
Yes.
The same thing when I got the call for ordination.
Gotcha.
And I got the call a long time ago. I wasn't even in the Episcopal Church when I got the call.
Got you.
But God didn't make it clear until I got to the Episcopal Church. That's when it really got heavy on my heart. Like, this is where I called you.
Yes.
This is exactly where I called you. And let me tell you how I knew. And then I'll answer whatever other questions you have. When I finally surrendered, when I finally said, okay, God, you know what? All the other things that I thought were a priority,
yes,
all of it's going to be put on the back burner. You tell me what you want me to do, God, and I'll just do it.
Yes.
And when I finally surrendered, everything fell into place. And suddenly there was a peace and a sense of liberation, Kevin, that I have never, ever had before.
Yes.
I've done other things and felt accomplished and felt proud and felt excited, but I have never felt this level of peace and liberation,
yes,
until I finally surrendered and said, if you want me to be an Episcopal priest, then that's what I'll do.
Yes.
And every day I wake up with a sense of peace that I have never had before. Like, no matter what else happens or doesn't go right, I'm living in the center of what God called me to do. And there's peace there. Peace doesn't always mean you're going to be happy.
Very
but
true.
It means you are at peace with whatever it is. I'm just holding to God's hand,
yes,
because I'm in the center of what he told me to do.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Thank you. Now, but I want to switch gears real quick and then come back to that, right? Because I'm thinking about my mother right now. So I am the primary caregiver for my mother. And I'm thinking we need to create a caregiving association where Black men in particular who are caring for their elderly parents can really come together and in a safe space, talk about that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so I'm learning all of this by trial and error. It's like, it's like you wake up somewhere like, Mommy, okay, what are we going to do today? Because I don't know how to do that, but we're going to get it done. But it's the amount of time that we as Black men, take care or spend with our older parents.
Well, let me just say, God bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, you are racking up brownie points in heaven. Let me tell you that. Okay, yes. I have taken care of and buried 2 elderly loved ones.
Yes.
And so I know exactly where you are.
Yes.
And God bless you for that, because I know it's hard.
Oh, yes.
But let me tell you something. You are going to reap blessings, Kevin, for the rest of your life. Because when the Bible says honor your mother and father, this is exactly what God is talking about.
Yes.
Right? And because there were days where I was like, Lord, I don't understand. Why have you gotten me? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
But now I'm looking at my children and my and remember, the word says, the Psalms say, to those who are obedient, God will bless your children's children.
Yes.
And I'm looking at my children and my grandchildren who are so blessed, who for years had an actively alcoholic mother.
Yes.
And I'm looking at them now, and they are all doing so well. They're healthy. They're prosperous. My grandchildren are growing up beautiful. And I'm thinking, this is God honoring the elders.
Yes.
This is God blessing my children and my grandchildren, because even in my addiction, I was still obedient to him.
Yes.
Right? So you will reap blessings for this. But what you just said made me think, not that you need more on your plate, right? But you have your porch, but consider this.
Yes.
Consider having, like you said, a cohort that meets however often you want to meet.
Yes.
But have specific topics. So like one of the topics needs to be, how do we do caregiving as Black men? Because as Black men, you're going to do caregiving differently, right?
Yes.
Right? So how do we do that as Black men? Whether you're caring for a parent, a grandparent, or a child that you have to care for, an adult child or a sibling or aunt, uncle. How as Black men do we do caregiving?
Yes.
Right? How as Black men do we learn how to be gentle with our women?
Yes.
Right? Because our Black men treat our women like we're men.
Yeah.
Like we do. Well, our Black men, and I see this, and I'm saying this because I see it in my son, I see it in my father, I see it in my siblings, my brothers, although my father has gotten much more gentle as he's gotten older. But our Black men, we're not gentle with our women. We don't talk to them gently. We don't coddle them. We're not as affectionate. We don't do that for our women. How do we as Black men, that could be one of your topics, how do we as Black men learn to be gentle with our women?
Yes.
Right?
Well, I was talking to a buddy of mine and also a friend of mine. I'm thinking about doing on the podcast a series of cigar conversations where, once the weather gets warmer, we can sit out on my porch or sit out on the deck, have the podcasting equipment, smoke cigars, and really talk about one of these topics.
That's right.
So this is good because again, sometimes with men, and particularly Black men, you got to give us another activity to get our minds onto something, on what you really want it to be about. So you can't just say, come to my house and we're going to talk. Well, you got to put the TV on. I got to have a cigar. We got to play basketball. We got to do golf. We got to do something else before we talk about what we really need to talk about. But I can't just come over and start talking to you about that.
And you know what? That's okay. That's all right. Like if it's cigars, or like you said, golf or basketball, or however you want to do it, you can do that. And I totally get that, because women, not just Black women, but women in general, that's what we do. We sit around and talk, right? That's how we engage. With men, it's differently. And see, as a woman, I know women. As a man, you're going to know men. So if you know that that's what works, right, then that's how you set it up.
Yes.
To make sure that the men are in a space that goes directly back to, how do you create a safe space?
Yes.
You create a space that your men are going to feel comfortable in.
Yes.
We're sitting around smoking cigars.
Yeah.
This is what I do as a man. So I'm comfortable having this conversation here, right?
Yes.
Keep in mind that there might be some topics where folks don't necessarily want to talk about on the porch, They might be like, listen, we didn't take this one in the basement, No, seriously, because if you're talking about being a caregiver, being a son and a caregiver to a mother is difficult. What do you do when she needs to bathe, or she slips in the tub, or, those are sensitive topics that men want to feel that you really, really in a safe space to discuss.
Well, I do that now. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
At first, when I had to do it, like you said, I said, Lord, now there's got to be somebody else that's going to come and assist me. And he said, son, ain't nobody else coming. It's you.
And you know what? I did the exact same thing. I did this. My mother, obviously, as I just shared, my mother was passed.
Yes.
And so, the responsibility fell to me to be the caregiver for my grandfather, her father.
Yes.
And I know that if my mother was alive, she would be the one caring for her father, because they had a very close relationship.
Yes.
And since they had a close relationship, then my brother and I had a close relationship with our grandfather.
Yes.
And so when he got, on in years, I assumed that responsibility, because there was no way that I was going to let him, suffer alone. So I moved him into my home. But just like you, I moved him in, and I'm like, oh boy, now what am I going to do? And I had to also learn how to get comfortable and make it work.
Yeah.
And I had women that I could go to and talk to about it, right?
Yeah.
You know, I had elders in the church who was also since passed now,
Yes.
but elders in the church that I could go to and say, listen, this is what I'm kind of dealing with here, you know.
Yes. Yes.
You know, but so as a man, you want to be able to have a space to have not just that topic, but, you know, I'm not a man, but I know there's a myriad of other topics that you need that safe space to say, listen, I got to talk about this, because when men don't have that space, that's when it becomes a problem.
Absolutely.
And the thing that I've learned with mental health with men is that often men find their confidence in women, right? Whether it's your spouse or your life partner or your mother or your sister, you know, or a good female friend, right? Men find their confidence in women. And if men don't have a woman in their life, regardless of whatever capacity it is, don't have that, and they can't turn to their male friends,
Yes.
that's when it becomes a crisis for addiction, mental illness, suicide, because now you're isolated,
Yes.
right? I can't talk to my brothers about this.
Yes.
I don't have a woman in my life to talk to about it. So everything just stays bottled in,
Yes.
right? So that's why you see a lot, especially older Black men, you know, fall into addiction, die by suicide because their wife may have died, or because they may have gotten divorced and never got married, or never gotten married at all, or and they don't have anybody safe that they can turn to.
Yes.
So when you create this space for men, this is a big deal,
Yes, it is.
because you're creating a space for us to just be human,
Yes.
to do human things and connect in a human way that we all need, even though America has told Black America that we're supposed to be strong like pack mules. We still have a right to be human and be vulnerable.
Yes. 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 Now the interesting thing that I kind of like take a break right now and just ask this question here.
Sure.
When we talk about mindfulness, when we talk about Black men and women coming together, when should it start? And should we think about doing this in like 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade?
Oh, absolutely. As early as children can walk and talk,
Yes.
we should be teaching them how important their mental health is. And mindfulness, meditation, and prayer are all what I call tools in your toolbox.
Yes.
Okay. And children learn best by watching adults.
Yes.
So when you invite children into natural behaviors that you have, they begin to learn, and it becomes normalized,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I was thinking about it the other day. I was thinking about how I have more than a dozen prayer books, but there's only one prayer that I know by heart, the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. That's the only prayer that I know by heart, because that was the prayer that my parents always said to me and my grandparents always said to me. So they normalized prayer for me,
Yes.
right? It became second nature for me. We can do the same thing with children around mindfulness and meditation. We teach them very early on. As early as they can bend their knee and fold their hands, we can teach them how to do that, right?
Yes.
So that they can learn how to regulate their emotions, regulate their breathing, manage their thoughts, and it gives them a better opportunity to be able to make healthy and wise decisions, right? But having said that, it's okay if the horse is already out of the barn. You can learn how to do meditation, mindfulness, and obviously prayer anytime in life. Anytime. And there's so many ways that you can begin to learn to do that. And, you know, in Western Christianity has us all fooled that meditation is somehow something evil. But if you look at Eastern Christianity, and if you read your Bible, Christ went into prayer and meditation often.
Yes.
Meditation is not, I'm just going to have my mind empty and that way, you know, evil forces can invade it. No, meditation is being intentional about bringing yourself to a place of quietness and
Yes.
peace and allowing yourself to connect with the creator in whatever way you describe and engage the creator.
Yes.
Okay. Right. But it's intentional. It's not, okay, well, I'm just going to empty my mind and it's just going to be a free for all. That's not true. Right. And we can teach our children how to do that.
There are these two brothers that I had a chance to interview on the podcast.
Yeah.
And
I remember.
Kicks. They're from Asbury. And they struggled at first, but now they've got it to where they have this whole school on lockdown in terms of mindfulness techniques. And they even have a mindful room that when the kids get out of kilter, they can just grab a pass without even asking the teacher, and they go to this room and kind of get their thoughts back together. And I guess when the light comes on, one of the counselors will come in to kind of facilitate that process. And
I remember that. I remember that podcast. And you know what? How phenomenal is that? If we can have PE, physical ed, right? And if we can have typing like you and I used to have when we were in school, right? Then we can definitely have classes around mental health and wellness and how we have practices and techniques for that, which at the top of the list is mindfulness and meditation.
Yes.
It's all about managing our own mental and emotional wellness. That's all about it, right? And I believe what Frederick Douglass said, it's easier to build healthy children than it is to repair broken men.
Absolutely.
But at any point in the lifespan, we can always make our mental health and wellness a priority.
Yes, we can. Kimme.
Well, sir, listen, it is 7:00.
This is fantastic, but I listen. So, do you have any books out that people can read that you've created?
I do. Yes, my book is called "The Window of Grace: My Journey to Recovery Through Christian Faith."
Yes.
And let me share my contact information. People can reach me in email.
Yep.
And I'll be more than happy to engage if people want to just chat with me, or if they want me to come and speak, or they want to learn more about mental health and wellness, or social justice and equity. More than happy to engage with that. I don't have a website. You can find me on Facebook at Kimme Carlos. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Kimme Carlos. And my email address is just my first and last name, KIMMECARLOS @gmail.com. That's Kimme with one I and one E and two M's. KIMMECARLOS @gmail.com. And as you can see, I love running my mouth, Kevin, anytime you want me to come back. Anytime.
But listen, I'm going to send you a link. And in that link, I'm going to ask for your bio. I'm going to ask for your headshot. And then all those places where people can get your book, I want you to list that inside that form. And so that when we drop this episode, folks can go to the bio in the episode and they can get all this information and they can be in touch with you. But Kimme, this was fantastic. Thank you. Congratulations. Continued success. The platform is always open to you, and we're going to keep talking because we're going to try to move the Entrepreneur Enclave platform to something larger, that we are really interacting with everybody and networking to make sure that all these I's and T's are crossed, that we can help through the entrepreneurial spirit.
Listen, that sounds wonderful.
Yes.
I support that wholeheartedly. I look forward to coming back to join you. Keep doing what you are doing, creating this platform, creating a space, amplifying voices, empowering with information. All of that is so important. Thank you, my brother, for doing what you're doing.
Thank you, and God bless you. Have a great evening now.
You too. Bye-bye.
Right, bye-bye.
That concludes another episode of the Entrepreneurial Enclave with Kevin Wortham, the podcast that focuses on building, maintaining, pivoting, planning, and investing in you, the entrepreneur. We hope you found this episode informative and enlightening. If you have any questions or comments about any of our episodes, please call 609-731-9311 or email Kevin at minding-our-business.com. We look forward to joining us for our next one. Until next time.